Welcome to Discover a New Future, a show geared at empowering women to be the best versions of themselves. I'm your host, Faith Saunders. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that many of you may be wondering, what does that have to do with women's issues? Well, it has a lot to do with women's issues, and by the end of today's show, you'll hear why. So before you start clicking, let's share why this particular topic, human trafficking, is so important. It's important because it has no boundaries. It impacts individuals across various socioeconomic background, gender, you name it. And one of the key things that our guest today will be doing is shining light in terms of why it is important as women. Some of us are parents, grandparents, some of us are our daughters. If you're a young person watching this show, why is this important, and why it could impact your life? So today I want to welcome my great guest from Prevent Child Abuse. And the specific program is the Human Trafficking Prevention Initiative. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be talking, as I mentioned, about human trafficking. And my guests are Carrie, help me, Carrie.
Spicer.
Mm-hmm. And everyone knows that I mess up people's names, so that's okay.
No problem.
Spicer, who is a program coordinator, and Jennifer Hammer, I think I got that right.
Yes, you did.
Who is a group facilitator at the program. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. I met these two ladies at a training that they did earlier this year. And I was so moved by the information that was shared that I felt that it would be doing a disservice if I didn't bring this particular topic to our audience to really educate and empower individuals, because I think it does both things. It educates, but it also can empower individuals when you have information and you know what you're looking at. So I really appreciate you coming today and being here to share some of your knowledge about this particular topic. But before we do that, everyone knows I'm big on statistics, right? And I pulled some from the information that we spoke about. One of the things that I learned from you is that over 100,000 minors are currently exploited in the United States each year. And that's a conservative number. And also that 83% of human trafficking victims are U.S. citizens. So often when we hear about human trafficking, we think about a different country and people who are from poor socioeconomic situation. Third world countries, I can say that because I'm considered coming from one. I'm Jamaica. So, but it does impact everyone, as I mentioned earlier. So ladies, this work is not easy work. This work is challenging work. This is work that can really, you could go home thinking about this and can be really drained from doing this work. Why do you do it? Why do you do this work?
Well, we view this issue as a child abuse issue, that there are vulnerable young teens and children that are preyed upon by traffickers and people that are looking to exploit them. Unfortunately, it's a reality.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we feel that this is so important to educate youth and the community about this information. And the more that people are educated and aware, the more we will be successful in preventing this from happening to our youth.
Wow. And that's so true. But when we talk about human trafficking, what is that? So because everyone has maybe their own preconceived notion of really what that is. So what is human trafficking? How would you describe it?
It's the buying and selling of human beings for a profit. So, a lot of times people think, oh, well, it's just an issue that happens somewhere else, or if they think about it in the terms of taken, where someone's forcibly kidnapped. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play out that way. In fact, that's one of the least common ways that it happens. The most common way is someone will be boyfriended in. And what boyfriending means is a young person may start a relationship with a person that they think cares about them. In actuality, that person is just buying time and waiting for an opportunity for something to come across where they can potentially traffic them. So they will maybe it could be months, it could be a year, but unfortunately at one point or another they use that loving relationship against that person, and that person doesn't even see it coming.
Wow. So when this happened, does the individual, can they be at home while this is happening, or is it something that, you know, the child or the young person, usually happens to women, if I'm correct, right? Young women. They're taken away. I mean, can it happen under your own roof and you're not even aware that that's happening?
Yes, it can, and it happens to young women and young boys as well. It can happen while they're living under their roof by their parents or caregivers. It can happen while they're going to school and maybe they're being trafficked on the weekends or at night. So it does often go unseen.
Oh, wow. So in a sense, and it does, it's just to mean prostitution, or when we say trafficked, what we're saying?
Yes, so our focus at Prevent Child Abuse is specifically on domestic minor sex trafficking. So we focus on youth who are in the U.S., who are U.S. citizens that are being trafficked in U.S. borders.
Wow. Wow.
And when we use the term trafficking, we're talking specifically, in this case, about sex trafficking.
Right.
So being used for sexual services.
Wow. So how do you, some of these young people, how do you connect with them? Do they connect with you, or do you just educate? What do you do in your agency?
Well, we definitely try to build a rapport with them, but I think just the fact that we come in and say, hey, we're going to talk about commercial sexual exploitation, and they're like, what? And we kind of talk through what it is to be exploited by somebody, what it is to be used sexually by somebody, and talking about that with them. I think that is something that they don't usually hear.
That's true.
It's unique to them, it's important to them, it matters to them, and so I think a connection is made pretty easily when we start that.
That's so
process.
True. I can see that, because someone who in that situation, you're going to a school or whatever the environment you're speaking about this topic, and this is something that there's so much shame around, I could assume.
Definitely.
A lot of shame. So individuals may not share with anyone, but just having you voicing it, just saying it, and having them see that it's okay to, this is a safe space to actually, or someone safe to speak with, I could see where that could actually help in terms of connecting.
Yes, I think it's so important to be able to identify and name these things for youth, because they're not aware of it, and also telling them that this is illegal, that they're protected under the law if this is happening to them, and that there are resources are available to them are so essential for their own health and safety.
Wow. When you have gone into schools or the different environments that you speak at, have you had individuals who have contacted you after the fact to say, well, this has happened to me, or I may be in a similar situation?
You would be surprised. I mean, we have gone in, and usually the way the curriculum's set up, it's 10 sessions. Sometimes day one we're there and we have disclosures of girls telling us that this has happened to them.
Wow.
And these are, girls in New Jersey. Fortunately, it can play itself out in the fact that these girls don't see themselves as victims, because to them that was their boyfriend. They don't see these men or individuals who traffic them as pimps or traffickers. They see them as, this is my boyfriend, and we were doing this together, or it's like a Bonnie and Clyde thing sometimes. So the traffickers really reframe the thinking of the youth to get them to believe whatever it is that he's telling them. There's so much manipulation and coercion and I guess reframing involved of the youth, and at one point they lose themselves so much after being involved with this predatory human being.
Wow. You mentioned boyfriending, right? That's is that the only way that recruiting happens with you, do you think? Or?
Oh no, there's sometimes social media is a big thing in our world right now, and unfortunately that is also how people are recruited. Sometimes a youth will talk to someone online, and just like kids are talked to about stranger danger and stuff like that, However, it's not only that person may potentially, try to harm you in a certain way. He may act like he's your boyfriend and you totally don't think that he's up to something, but he is. And as, we go through the show, we mention he, but as we know, traffickers can be male or female.
And I wanted to mention something about recruiting too. What seems to happen a lot also is that girls that are already involved are encouraged to recruit other girls.
Oh, wow.
So we actually see girls that are recruiting other girls into these kinds of situations where there's a pimp or a trafficker that is then controlling and profiting from them.
Wow. Is it the what's the word? The magnet or the thing that really attract young women? Is it the glamour? Because it sometimes seems that some of these young women may have more money than others, people who are in this lifestyle. Is that...
That can be a factor. That can play a part. I think that sometimes people will say something like, oh, well, stripping is not the same thing. Or, if I strip, that's not going to lead me into this lifestyle. Unfortunately, it's very much so a risk factor, being if someone is working at a strip club, there could be an owner that is a trafficker or a pimp, but generally the pimps and traffickers will send their girls there to make money. That'll be one of the ways that they have them making money for them. So I think our culture glamorizes that lifestyle very much, and I think a lot of young girls grow up thinking that it's not going to be harmful to them if they get involved in this lifestyle, and unfortunately it is very harmful. For many different reasons.
Yeah, I agree. I think too that in our society there's a perception that you can make easy money doing this, you can make a lot of money, but that's really a myth that we try to break down, because what happens in those kinds of situations is that there is a trafficker who is controlling that money, and girls are not seeing a profit from it. And the profit that they are seeing, maybe gifts as a result of that, or expensive materials that don't even belong to them that they are receiving for a short time. So I think that's a big myth that we try to talk to people and explain that a little bit more, because a lot of people don't understand kind of that dynamic that someone is actually controlling and taking the money and profiting from that, and they're not actually seeing that.
Wow. So New Jersey, I mean, a lot of people see the Garden State, very, we're considered one of the richest states in the United States, and all of this. So do you think, I'm surprised to see that this is a big issue in New Jersey. What makes New Jersey vulnerable? State that is vulnerable to having human trafficking, would you say?
I think that every child potentially is at risk. However, there are certain risk factors that can make someone more vulnerable than others. Children that are involved in the child welfare system, for example, also LGBT youth, youth that have been sexually abused. We've actually found that 70 to 90% of youth that have been sexually abused as children wind up somehow being exploited further in life, and 70 to 90% of these adults that we speak to started in the sex industry as teens or as children, and explain that they have been prior sexual abuse in their lives.
Wow.
And specifically what makes New Jersey vulnerable as an environment, there's actually a lot of different factors to that. One is that we're close to major metropolitan cities, so New York, Philadelphia, DC, all is in an easy drive away. We have extensive highway, truck stops. It's very easy to get in and out of the state, airports, ports, waterways. We also have Atlantic City, which is a destination spot. So Atlantic City sport arenas, military bases, all of those create the environment in which there is a demand to purchase sex, and therefore more sex trafficking exists in those areas. We also, natural disasters increase the risk for trafficking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Hurricane Sandy, when it displaces people, people lose their jobs, people lose their homes,
Wow.
People can go missing. So traffickers tend to target those areas and prey on those as well.
Wow. Wow. Someone is in a distressing situation and
Exactly.
and it's taken advantage of.
Yes.
Wow.
They become extremely vulnerable in that kind of situation.
Wow. I read when we had the Super Bowl in New Jersey that this was high alert time because for human trafficking. Can you explain why that was?
Sure. Well, it creates that environment where there is a lot of people. It's a party environment. There's a lot of people with money trying to have a good time. And so sporting events in general increase trafficking.
Wow. So as a parent, because as I mentioned, individuals may be wondering, what does this have to do with me? As a parent, what words of advice would you give a parent if they are seeing, what are some of the signs, let's put it that way, that parents should be aware of, that their child may be in this type of situation?
Well, firstly, every parent should know in a sense that this could potentially happen to someone that they care about, their child's friend, or someone else that's close to them. However, important things to realize is that there are red flags, and the red flags can be many, many different things. But just to name some, sometimes physical abuse, bruises or anything like that, self-harm of any type. Also, if that youth is like gone a lot, there's unexplained absences from school or from a group home or anything of that sort. There could also be risk factors which include branding tattoos. And basically what a branding tattoo can be a name of the trafficker, or it could be some kind of barcode or something that indicates that that person belongs to the trafficker.
Branding
Yeah.
of a human being.
Yes.
Similar to what they do to cows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. So what other signs, other subtle things that, if any, that because sometimes these are not, they may have the branding somewhere that the parent won't be seeing that. So
Yeah. So if a youth is isolated from their family and their friends, if they have multiple cell phones, if they are in possession of expensive items that maybe they didn't purchase for themselves, those would be examples to look out for as well.
Would behavior change also in terms of a child who was normally
Absolutely.
very withdrawn and very, obedient, having a total different type of personality, etc.?
Yeah, and you can see that in both ways. You could see someone who may have been an introvert being more of an extrovert, and an extrovert being more withdrawn as well.
Okay. Wow. So as a parent, if you're seeing some of these signs and you have some concerns, because again, some of these signs could mimic other things that are happening in this young person's life. So what are there resources out there that that they could connect with to explore, just to even share their thoughts and see if what's happening?
Yes, there's documentaries out there. There's definitely literature of all types. There's different organizations that kind of have lists of red flags online that a parent could look into. There's also, I want to say, the National Human Trafficking Hotline is a really good resource because they're operating 24/7. They have people that are trained to have communication and have the ability to sort of walk through that process with the person who's calling. And you can also call anonymously if need be.
Okay. Wow.
We believe that the best prevention is to have open communication with your child, to talk to them about these issues so that they're aware, show them the resources, and just continue to have these open communication open talks with them, communicate with them.
And I totally agree with you. At what age, though? I mean,
I think that whenever the parent feels like it's a good time to have the sex talk and kind of, sex education in whatever fashion they see appropriate, I think they should also let them know that due to the fact that they have a body, that someone may want to use it to benefit. And it's not only physical, benefit as in, having sex with that person, but they may try to use them to profit off of their body as well. And just to let them know that this is something that could potentially happen, not as a scare tactic, but just so that they're aware of the issue.
Wow. So we're talking about New Jersey, but do traffickers who are in New Jersey go across borders, like sending, some of these young women to different states, etc.? Is that?
Yes, definitely. There are certain routes that traffickers use up and down the East Coast, from all the way up top, all the way to Florida, the entire West Coast. Of course, there's places in the Midwest and such that are, I want to say, sexual tourist destinations, unfortunately. But I think that sometimes if a youth is explaining that they've traveled to a lot of places and they don't really have a backstory of how they've been there, that can also be an indicator.
Okay, yeah. That's why I kind of went that road to see if there was some indicator. Because if they don't have the resources to do that and they're traveling, there's an issue, right?
If a 17-year-old says she's been to Las Vegas, that's something to think about.
Right, exactly. Wow. There's so many... Again, you even after speaking with you today, I've learned so much more than what I learned from those 2 days of classes that you did. But what are even a word of caution that you would actually share with the young women themselves? We're talking about parents now, but what are some of the things that you could say to some young people in terms of really what should they? We talked about what some of the signs are, but specifically for them, is there anything that you'd like to share with them?
I think that the messages that we try to send to them is to believe in yourself, have healthy self-esteem, set boundaries with people. We talk about healthy relationships so they know what that looks like, so that they can identify when something is not that. And try to also encourage the communication with their parents as well, or other trusted adults, and providing them resources so that they know if something is going on, there is someone on the other end of the phone that is there and can talk to you about it.
Wow. Yeah. We're talking about parents and the young people themselves, but I think it's just a huge gamut of individuals who need to be educated about this particular issue. You have teachers, you have guidance counselors, you have individuals who are in the human service arena who provide services to individuals. And sometimes you may be thinking that this child is belligerent and this child is, out of control, but maybe sometimes just a sign that a call for help, but they can't really say that, this is happening to me, It's so sad. So, a lot of times I've heard people say, if you're in that situation, why not just get out of it?
Yeah, that is a question we often get, and people think that this is something that youth choose to get involved in, and generally it's something that they are coerced, they're forced, they're manipulated, they're threatened, they're blackmailed. Usually there are threats of violence to try to escape or try to tell anybody about the situation. So that tends to keep people quiet because they're afraid of what's going to happen. They usually have experienced a lot of physical violence, as well as sexual violence related to this issue. So they're often in, just working in survival mode, really.
Wow. And I remember when I came to the training, you gave a book. That little book that was compiled, Survivor's Guide. But it was the stories from different young women. That was a Survivor's Guide. It was a grayish book,
Yes.
with young women, and I still have that book. I look at it occasionally, and I think that could be so helpful to parents or individuals, as I mentioned, who are in the caring profession. Is that could be purchased, or is it, where is that resource
Yes.
available?
Yeah, if they're interested in obtaining a copy, or reviewing it, or finding out how to purchase books, they can contact us at Prevent Child Abuse New Jersey, through our website, preventchildabuse.nj.org, and we can get them in touch with those resources.
Okay,
for sure.
perfect. Wow, because I've just reading those stories and what's in that book can be so eye-opening. Young women, and I really, every time I look at it, I think these young people are so brave to even be able to share their story, because it takes a lot to actually go down that path.
Absolutely.
Wow. So, we're almost towards the end of our show. What would you say to, are there any other resources that are out there? I mean, we talked about National Human Trafficking Resources, DIFAS. You meant not DIFAS anymore.
DCF.
Yes, exactly. I'm coming from the old school. Are there resources in institutions like that? Because you mentioned that a lot of kids in foster care may be recruited.
Yeah, there are a lot of resources in New Jersey. There's also a New Jersey human trafficking hotline number. There you could call NJ Child Abuse Hotline, absolutely, and they could provide resources for this as well. So there are a lot of options in terms of getting help. Just a lot of people aren't aware.
Right, and I think that's really what we want to do, is to help people to say that they're resources and become aware. That's the bottom line. You can't really monitor or address something that you're not aware of, but the more information you have, this easier for you.
Definitely. And I just wanted to add something as far as I think youth not telling when they're in this situation. Think about in a certain situation where a child is being trafficked by a parent. There's that loyalty there.
Can you repeat that?
Sometimes youth are trafficked by a parent.
Really?
Yeah. So if you think about, in some cases, why youth won't, get in touch with law enforcement or tell someone about what's going on, it could be normalized. It could have been happening to them for many, many years. The parent has told them not to say anything for whatever reason. So I definitely, don't want to ignore that factor. So that's why when youth don't come forward, sometimes it's hard for people to understand, but to that child, they may perceive it and think, well, I can't do this to my mom, or I can't do this to my dad.
Wow. That's interesting. See, again, another topic, another area that we didn't cover before. I think one of the things that I found very, very interesting in training that you did, which was excellent again, was that activity when you had us go through the room and actually talk about why it's so hard to leave. That was really an eye-opener to me. But, as I said, I always say time goes by when you're having fun, although this is not a fun topic we want to talk about, but it's one that we really want to have people be aware of. But I thank you so much for coming today and for sharing on this really important topic. And before we close, do you have anything that you'd like to say to our viewers?
No, it's just great talking with you, and I appreciate everyone taking an interest in watching. I think it's very, very important.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. And until next time, think positively. Thanks.